Remember how you loved the stories at bedtime about princesses and fairy godmothers? Well, you may want to hold on tighter to your teddy bear and keep that nightlight on, because these are not your mother's bedtime stories.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Not Your Mother's Bedtime Story. We're back again after a short break to celebrate Halloween. How's everybody doing tonight?
Super duper.
It would have been better if the Packers would have won.
Yeah, that's true. Rough Sunday football.
We don't want to
We
talk
are.
about
We are recording in our Packers lost grief, so it's kind of a bummer hanging over the air.
Y'all missed the first 20 minutes of us bantering about what they could have, should have done. So we're all Sunday quarterbacks here.
The horror show that is the Green Bay Packers.
That's a scary enough story right there.
Everybody have a good Halloween?
That
Yes,
was quiet.
It was really nice weather. Yeah. Good weather for Halloween for once. Well, I don't know. In the South, we kind of usually have good weather for Halloween. So
It's seasonably warm in New England. It's 70 degrees today.
No, I have to admit, though, my Halloween, I actually watched Conjuring 2 for the first time. I'd never seen The Conjuring 2. I've been in a horror movie slump for probably the past 10 years because my husband does not like horror movies, and so I didn't want to watch them alone. But now that I have a son who enjoys horror movies, we've been catching up on the backlog, and so good overall movie. I give it 2 thumbs up.
You should do the sequence. My daughter Ella and I did, and during COVID, we did all of the Conjuring in order. So I think it starts with the Nun, and then you can look it up online, but there is an order of how the all the series with the Annabelle movies plus the Conjurings in there. I think there's 7.
We watched the first Conjuring with Farmhouse and this one, the Enfield Poltergeist, which I know a lot about already. Just I'm listening and reading so much about it, and it's truly scary, truly terrifying, and just, I mean, of course, it got a little Hollywoodized, but still really scary story in general. I can't imagine that poor mother and what she went through with all the things that happened in that house.
So I do know that recently in New England, Colleen, there was I don't know if it's just a regular museum or some kind of traveling museum, but they had the actual Annabelle doll that you could go and see. And one of my coworkers went and saw it. And so but it reminded me of, and we can talk about this a little bit more in a minute, but the Zach Bagans Museum in Las Vegas. But so I don't know where it was exactly in New England, but it seems to be making its way. So they're actually out and about moving Annabelle around. If anybody's out in that area, and go catch a peek.
Well, the Warrens had like their own museum. Wasn't that in Connecticut?
Yes.
I think that's where the Warrens were from.
Connecticut.
And so maybe they've both passed away, but.
And I think their son-in-law is the one that kind of controls it now. So it's a Raggedy Ann doll. It's not. Yeah. It's not like the one that's in the movies. Mm-hmm. So it's a Raggedy Ann, right? And
right.
Still creepy enough.
Which this actually reminds me of too, Mom. And I had repressed this memory for a long time and only remembered it like a few years ago. But we actually went to hear the Warrens speak when we lived in Belleville. You took Colleen and I mean, I was probably like 8. I remember wearing like my little jellies shoes and capri pants. I was more worried about what I was going to wear to this big thing out of college. This little 8-year-old sitting in the audience listening to the Warrens. And I remember them being an older couple. And I remember the slideshow, and I remember Raggedy Ann doll. So again, like an 8-year-old, those were the things I remembered. And I asked you a couple years ago, I'm like, you took us to the Warrens, right? I can't believe you took a 8 and 11-year-old to the Warrens. But that was repressed in my mind for so long and just popped up, I think, when I started to watch The Conjuring again.
So it actually was in Connecticut. It was the Warren Seekers of the Supernatural. It said, come meet Annabelle, Ed and Lorraine's Warren namesake would not be complete without the world's most famous Warren Occult Museum. They're bringing the museum to the public. View the shadow doll, satanic idol, the haunted dinosaur toy, and of course the real Annabelle. So I think it was in Connecticut, but kind of cool.
Oh,
Can you see
there
it?
she is.
Oh.
For our listeners, Sherry is showing us a picture of the Annabelle doll, who is definitely well locked up
in its
with good reason. Yeah,
container,
yeah.
Right. I guess you would call it.
Want to keep her locked up for sure.
And then, Chrissy, if you wanted to talk about your experience from Zach Bagans, is it Peggy, the Peggy doll?
Oh yeah. So sure, I guess we'll get into this episode. This week is a little different than our previous 5 episodes, and we wanted to just take a time and talk about the scariest things that's ever happened to us. You've heard some stories already from Mom about her experiences with the Ouija board, which are actually, obviously terrifying and frightening, but we've all had little brushes with just the weird and the unexplained and what will happen. So that's going to be the focus of this episode this week, just something a little different. And just remember, if you do have a story to share, please contact us at notyourmothersbedtimestory@gmail.com. We're looking for more submissions as we regroup and look long-term at our recording schedule. Oh, and I do have, before we get going, I have one point of clarification. A couple of listeners had some questions about last week's episode, Hex by an X. And JR and Elva are not married. JR is actually, his wife is good friends with Elva. So just a point of clarification for that. Well, let's get going. So, I guess we could start with that story. So if anyone is not familiar with Zach Bagans, I mean, why are you listening to this podcast, actually? Zach Bagans is the host of Ghost Adventures, who has been on the Travel Channel for years, I think. I mean, he's had seasons and seasons of his investigations. And if you ever take a trip to Las Vegas, there is his museum. Can I even remember the official name of his?
Just think it's just Zach Bagans Museum, like Haunted Museum.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Haunted Museum, I think, right.
Very off the strip in Vegas. But when we were there 3 years ago now for our brother's 40th birthday party, Sherry, Mom, and I all ventured out and left the coolness of the casinos to wait out in like the 110-degree Vegas sun to get admitted into Zach's museum. And it's definitely, if you have the opportunity, it's a good tour. Definitely a lot of jump scares. I'll warn you about that. And definitely not for someone who's not into clowns, for sure. But it really, I mean, they take you through, you see Ed Gein's cauldron, you see the Kevorkian van, you see, they did have the chair, the rocking chair from The Haunting in Connecticut, if I can remember correctly, in the Dybbuk box. And probably the one item that haunted me, and I'm scared to even say her name because I've heard that even talking about her can potentially bring her up, but I'm going to take a risk and talk about Peggy the doll. So this doll was located in a dark room, and they had one of the spirit boxes. So the just kind of that white noise with the crackling in the room, and people on the tour were requested to go ahead and ask questions of Peggy, and she would reply through the spirit box. Now, again, the skeptic in me is always like, okay, who's behind the curtain? Who is piping these answers through the spirit box? But when we were there, do you guys remember there was the one guest, she was asking quite a bit of questions, and Peggy was answering her. I think, she asked, like, do you like me? And, she said no. And she started cursing and that type of thing. And so whether it was Peggy or whether it was, Aaron behind the curtain, I hope it was Aaron. I love Aaron. Whether it was Aaron behind the curtain, at posing as Peggy, I don't know, but that was one of the scarier exhibits in the museum. And we were still staying in Vegas that night. That was our last night there. And so the next morning, we were still in Las Vegas. And I have a lot of dreams. I have very vivid dreams, which again, I can bring up at another story. My dreams are one way I think where maybe the supernatural likes to come through for me. And that morning, it was the dream that you have right when you wake up, but it was very vivid. And my dream was of Peggy, and she essentially told me, "You're mine." And so that was enough to wake me up and get really freaked out. But I thought, okay, being just at that exhibit the day before definitely probably played on my subconscious, and I didn't think anything of it until we flew home that night. And then the next morning, the exact same dream happened. And so I said, okay, I need to do something about this. I don't know if I went to church, but I know that I prayed quite heavily that night and that day, and actually, did ask for some help from God for that one, because I thought, oh my gosh, should I bring back some sort of demonic attachment? And fortunately, God answered my prayers, and there was no more scary dreams from Peggy. So I don't know if my imagination acted up with me, or if she was really, really trying to hang on to me. But, and because you guys didn't have anything happen, Sherry, your mom.
Mm-mm.
Not from Peggy, but I will say, so if y'all do get a chance to get out to Vegas, I would recommend it to visit the museum if you're into that type of thing, because there were some things, yes, while there are jump scares and while there are a plethora of clowns in that place,
we won't, right?
There's so many different things in there that it there's a room full of, what do you want to call it, artifacts from serial killers that Zach Bagans has collected. So toe tags, paintings from John Wayne Gacy, and just real unusual things that he has collected over time. There was a mirror, remember, we looked at, where if you were to look into the mirror, there could be something that would look back at you, and I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time standing in front of that mirror. But I do remember one room that affected me. So Peggy didn't affect me, but I do remember going into one room, and it was, so Zach Bagans has purchased and acquired the van from Dr. Kevorkian. And so if y'all don't know who Dr. Kevorkian is, he was the person that was convicted of assisting in over 130 assisted suicides. So people who didn't want to live, wanted to die, he would assist them in their deaths. And a lot of these, if not all of them, took place in this. It was a 1968 Volkswagen van. And for those of you that are familiar with Back to the Future, it would also be referred to as the Libyan van. It was white, not blue, but I digress. So this van is part of the Zach Bagans Museum, and I just remember, thinking, okay, it's not really a big deal. You're going in there, you're seeing this van, and it was kind of set up. It had, some kind of, gurney type thing inside the van, but it gave me the worst feeling. There was a smell, and I remember saying that to Mom and Chrissy. I said, there is just a rancid smell in here. I'm like, do you smell that? And they said, no, we don't smell it. I said, I can't be in here anymore. I mean, it was just, there was something about that room. And of all the other rooms that we went into, it didn't have any effect on me. But going into this room with this van, just something about it, there was a smell. It was rancid. And I said, I got to step out. You all can stay in here and visit and, whatever you want to do in this room, but I got to get out. So I feel like there's just certain things that, the Dybbuk box, the Peggy doll, like that didn't have any effect on me, but going into that room with that van, it just made me feel sick, and I had to get out and move on. I mean, even like, Chrissy said, there was a lot of different things. There was a staircase from some house that was apparently, there was possession, things like that in there.
The demon house.
Demon house.
Yeah,
so it
that
was
was
just
scary.
all these things. But that room, for whatever reason, so if anybody's listening that had a similar experience, within the Zach Bagans Museum, I mean, there's a lot of creepy stuff in there. It just that room for some reason had an effect on me. And I didn't have any dreams about Peggy. I didn't have any dreams about Dr. Kevorkian. I mean, we were in Vegas, so I probably didn't have many dreams. But it just that room for some reason or another had an effect on me. But be prepared. There are some jump scares. I may or may not have grabbed a woman that had a midriff top on during one of those said jump scares, but that was,
Or used your sister as a human shield for all the clowns that came through.
After you. They still went after me. I was like, what the heck? I can't even use my own sister as a shield, and they still come after me. So
I still remember that. Do you want me to go first? Yes.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I had scratches down my back from my mom. After that.
Wow. Yes. I was digging my nails into the back of her shirt. I'm so sorry, Sherry. I'm so scared.
We talk a big game, but we're all a bunch of chickens, is what it really sounds like.
I'll never forget it, though. I used my own sister as a human shield, trying to protect myself, and they waited until she passed and then jumped out at me. So there you go. Go first. Go first, everybody. Go first.
Exactly. In the horror movie, I would have been bumped off, of course. But...
Right. It's always the second one.
Yep. So anyway, that's my scary story, where I guess one of the scariest, and I could talk a little bit more about it. But Colleen, I know you've got one that truly is scary and haunting, if you want to share.
Well, I don't know if it's scary. Maybe just I guess it was. I guess it was frightening at the time. But so this happened to me when I was 10 years old. So I had my cousin Nicole had passed away from an illness, and she was 9 at the time. It was a very tragic for our whole entire family, and we were very close in age. We were very close growing up, and so certainly it took a big toll on me being at such a young age. We lived far away from her. We lived about 5 hours away, and so we only got together during the summer times or special occasions. So she died in November, and this happened that December. We were getting ready for Christmas, and normally we had Christmas at my grandparents' farm, which we've talked about in other episodes. But this year the snowfall was so heavy that their farm was hardly accessible because of the heavy snowfall. So they decided to have the Christmas celebration at my Aunt Debbie's house, who is Nicole's mother. So I had stayed at their house to help Debbie prepare for Christmas Eve, which was going to happen the next day, and we're going to have the family there. I think I was the only kid that had stayed that night at their house to help her with preparations. My parents and my siblings were staying at my other grandparents' house, so it was just me, and I was went to bed that night sleeping in my cousin's bedroom, not the cousin that had passed away, her younger sister's bedroom, down on the main floor. And I was awakened by a voice, and it was calling my name, saying, "Colleen, Colleen." I thought it was my Aunt Debbie waking me up. And it was in the middle of the night, and I was like frustrated. Why is she waking me up? Why is she waking me up? I looked up, and at the foot of the bed, I saw my cousin Nicole, who had died the month before, and she was glowing, and she was white, and I could see the very outline of her. All of her. I could see the details in her face. I could see the details in her hair. She had her hair in 2 pigtail braids. She was wearing a robe, and I could see the details in the robe. But being 10 and being awoken and just frightened at what I saw, I was scared. So I pulled the covers up over my head and And, as we had talked about before, when we had the visitors, nighttime visitors in the bed, it was like, just go away, just go away. Cause I was scared at what I had seen. And then it did go away. I fell asleep, and I didn't tell my Aunt Debbie about it. It was her daughter. I thought it would upset her. But I did tell my mom about the story. And I think it was after some time later that my mom did tell my Aunt Debbie the story, and finally, and had told her what I saw. And she said, when she passed away, she was wearing pigtail braids, and no one else would have known. No one else knew that she was wearing her braids and her hair on that side. And sometimes I know that they say that sometimes when you're close to someone, that if they never have a chance to say goodbye, that they do reach out to you. And maybe that was her way of saying goodbye to me when I was staying in their house that night. She felt that connection and was able to say goodbye to me that night. That's how I feel why she visited me. But again, in hindsight, I wish I wouldn't have pulled back those covers. I wish I would have spent time with her. But being 10, and being awoken in the middle of the night, that's what you do.
Well, I'm almost 46, and I still probably would have pulled the covers over my head too if that would have happened. I mean, sure, you've mentioned it before, and I think it is true that they do come to you at night when the veil is thinner, and your guard is almost down, where you can
accept those.
They can come, and that's why. Yeah. And so, but again, it's the most frightening time because it's dark and you're asleep, and then you're awake, and to be awakened by something that you're not expecting is right. Scary. But yeah, you're right. Definitely she wasn't meaning to be threatening. She probably just wanted to say goodbye, like you said.
Right.
Well, and you were 10. I mean,
right. I mean, like you said, anybody would be terrified, to wake up and hear your name being called by somebody, and it's Nikki, but that was the same way. I didn't realize it was my mother crawling into bed that one time, that the same thing happened to Nancy, and it happened to me when we were staying with my dad. And I told her to go away. I'm like, I regret that. And I says, just go away. But I was so afraid, and I was like, something's laying next to me in bed. And I know the only two people in the house are my dad and me, and my dad couldn't get out of bed. And it was just, and Nancy said, she said, hello, Mom. But I said, just go away. I didn't, I was just, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. I was so afraid, but.
And I know you could dismiss it as, oh, maybe it was a dream, but I know it wasn't a dream. I know I was awake. I know I was fully woken from that dead sleep, because I remember like being just so annoyed because I thought it was my Aunt Debbie waking me up for some reason. I was just like mad because I had fallen asleep. So I know I was awake. That it wasn't a dream.
Well, I mean, and it's, even though you were 10 and it was a frightening experience, I still feel like the underlying part of it is that she came to you and she wanted to say goodbye. You were close. You were cousins, but yet you were very close. And the fact that you were at her house and that was familiar to her and she could come there, and just having that last bit of interaction is kind of comforting in a way, that she was reaching out and saying, hey, I'm here. I just want to, I'm okay. I want to say goodbye. I think is endearing and warming at the same time as it was probably frightening for you when you were 10. But
Speaking of nighttime visitors, or do you want me to go, or?
Speaking of.
Hey. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Nighttime visitors.
I will go. Well.
And the podcast is taking a turn.
All right. My husband and I winter in Arizona, and we have gotten into traveling around the state and exploring different hotels that are reportedly haunted. We've been in Jerome. We haven't tried the one in Flagstaff. That's going to be next on our list. What is it? The
Monte Vista? Hotel Monte Vista?
Yeah, the Monte Vista. We were in Bisbee, Arizona, which is the southern part of the state. It's not far from the border. We stayed in the Copper Queen Hotel, and that's reportedly haunted by several ghosts. One being a prostitute that killed herself in her room. There's a little boy, Billy, who drowned in a nearby river that you can hear him giggling and running the halls. And they say only children can see him. And then there's a tall man wearing a cape and a hat that smokes a cigar. These are the most famous ghosts, but they said it could be haunted by as many as 16 different entities. And we stayed in this one room one night, and it was late, and it was actually January, but it was warm in the room. But I woke up in the middle of the night and just cold as ice. And it was not just oh yeah, the heater's not on or something. It's come from your core. Something is taking out the heat from your inner body. And it was just, I was freezing. My teeth were chattering. And I pulled the comforter up tighter, and your dad was just asleep. He was just snoring. He didn't care. But I was freezing, and it was just like if you could see your breath, and it was that cold. And we got up the next morning. I didn't hear or see anything. It was dark, but I didn't hear or see anything. But we got up the next morning, and it's like, I'd like to go down and take some pictures of the lobby. It's a beautiful hotel. And it's like over 100 years old. And I says, I got to take a picture of some of this architecture. So I go over to get my camera, completely dead. I go to get my phone, completely dead. I put new batteries in the camera. The phone was plugged in, still dead. So was your dad's. And so whatever visitor we had that night, it drew all the energy, drew it from me, drew it from electronics. And they said that many guests have experienced the same thing, where an entity will just messes with your cell phones or your cameras. So I had a visitor, but I didn't see anything, didn't hear anything, but just was stealing the heat and stealing the electricity there. So it's a very, and they actually have a journal at the front desk that, people can write in their experiences, and it's full. It just seems like more people experience something than they don't. So it's
Well, I think that happens a lot. There tends to be certain places that hold on to energies, and just plethora of stories of energy and ghost sightings and things happening. And, for whatever reason, whether it's, some people say, what is it, the minerals that the town is on, or, a vortex, whether those exist or not, that seem to channel and funnel different types of energies. And we can even talk about, again, I have another dream story from another place that seems to attract haunted energy, which is the Stanley Hotel, located in or near Estes Park, Colorado. And so again, another birthday trip. Yeah, these always happen on birthday trips. Another birthday trip. This was Sherry's 30th birthday.
Oh, come on. I'm not that old. No, I'm that old.
Well, this was a while ago.
A while? Yeah, it was a while.
This was a while. Yeah, but yeah, for so weird as one who enjoys all things scary, want to spend her 30th birthday party, but at the Stanley Hotel, which again, if those of you who are familiar, the Stanley is again another gorgeous building built up in the mountains. And it was actually the inspiration for Stephen King to write The Shining. And it has just a wealth of different stories and happenings and occurrences. We could go on and on. Also the site for Dumb and Dumber, which is maybe even more precious for all of us. But so we all lobbed our way up there. It was another girls' trip with a few guys invited along. So Bill, Colleen's husband, and Sherry was your boyfriend at the time, now husband, David, came along. But otherwise, the normal suspects for a chick trip came along. And I was actually sharing a room with two cousins, Lauren and Megan. And we were on the floor that wasn't even supposed to be as haunted as the third floor, which was where you were, right, Sherry? The third floor was
I was on the fourth. Yes.
Okay.
To the dismay of my then boyfriend, now husband, He was not happy with me because we basically stayed in the closet.
But it was a haunted closet.
All right. So history check with the Stanley. Okay, so the Stanley Hotel it has a lot of history to it. So part of it is that back in the day, it was catered to the elite, the wealthy, things like that. So the 4th floor is, like I said, basically rooms or closets because that was for the help and the children. So like the nannies and everything, like they all stayed on the 4th floor with the kids while all of the, adult people that were staying there were staying on the other levels. Like I remember Colleen's room, I believe, was on the 2nd floor, and they had a big old room, and it was real nice. But so it's since, but even the hallways themselves on the 4th floor are smaller and skinnier. I mean, it's just the way that everything was designed. So going back, thinking about how that was back in the day. But Stephen King, his room of choice was room 217, where he stayed. And he, like Chrissy said, got the idea for The Shining. And this is also the room where supposedly Jim Carrey stayed when he was filming Dumb and Dumber. And the story goes that they were filming Dumb and Dumber. Jim Carrey was there. So the may or may not be true. Jim Carrey, I apologize if you ever listen to this podcast. Love you. So you can, set the record straight. You're welcome to come on and tell us your story from your own words. If that ever happens, I might die a happy woman. But anyway, so
alrighty then.
The story goes that Jim Carrey was staying in room 17, and there's a ghost that haunts room 17 that does not like it when unmarried couples stay in that room. Well, apparently Jim Carrey was staying in that room with a female companion, got the bejesus scared out of him. He left, wouldn't even stay in the hotel to wait for a driver to come pick him up. He actually waited outside for the driver to come pick him up and would not go back in. So something terrified him so much that he left the Stanley that night, did not stay, didn't even wait inside, waited outside for somebody to come pick him up. But that was the room that we saw that room. We didn't go in, but we got to see it from the outside. That apparently has some alleged hauntings. That's where Stephen King stayed, but there are supposed to be hauntings on the 4th floor where there was a lot of activity. Like I said, children, nannies stayed there. So there's things that apparently occurred. Chrissy was the only one that had some kind of experience, so you can continue your story.
Well, so back to that experience, and again, all day, there's really not a lot to do there except to just really tour around the hotel, and we took a lot of pictures, and we had some pictures come back with orbs and different things like that, and we talked to the security guard who had a wealth of stories. And I think probably the kicker is that there was one channel on the TV that played The Shining 24/7. And so while we were getting ready in the room, we had The Shining on. And so you're definitely like living in that whole spooky world the whole time you're there. And so that night, I think Lauren and Megan, our cousins, had gone to bed, and I stayed up with Colleen and Bill in the bar and had one more beer with you two. And so by the time I had gotten back to the room was fairly dark. They had left the light on in the bathroom for me so I could see, but the room itself was dark. And I am again, starting to get a little freaked out because it's a dark room and it's a Stanley hotel. But I quickly got ready for bed, and they had saved me the empty bed. There were 2 queens in the room. They took one bed and left me the other. And I noticed that they had left the ceiling fan on because despite the fact it was May, but it was really cold there, the room was a little stuffy. And so they had the ceiling fan on, and I'm a back sleeper. And so I had laid down and tried, shut my eyes to try to go to sleep. And again, I preface this with the fact that I do have a lot of very vivid, crazy dreams. We can go on and on about the dreams. I've already mentioned one tonight. But this was a dream where, if you've ever had the dream where you have just fallen asleep and then dream that you've fallen off a cliff or have stepped into something and it jerks you awake. It felt like one of those dreams, but rather than me falling off a cliff, in my dream, something white and gauzy-like starts at the foot of the bed and slowly moves across my body and then keeps going through the headboard. So this was enough for me to wake up out of this very light sleep and give a blood-curdling scream. And incidentally, too, I had lost my voice. I was getting over a cold, and so it was really hoarse. And so for me to get out this blood-curdling scream was no small feat. And poor Lauren and Megan in that bed next to you. Can you imagine being woken up by a blood-curdling scream at the Stanley Hotel? I think they were probably more scared than I was. In a haunted hotel, those poor two. And I'm assuring them, I'm okay, it was just a dream. And I don't think any of us slept really well after that. But that was a thing. Was it a dream or wasn't it a dream? Because I know my eyes were shut. I don't lay there with my eyes open. So I know my eyes are shut. And the fact that the ceiling fan going around maybe had brushed my hair enough to kind of manifest, what that felt like as it was going through. So I don't know. Our other Aunt Debbie, who's been on before, was talking to the front desk person and told them about my experience. And he said, oh yeah, that's definitely paranormal. We get that all the time here. But I think the most interesting part of it all is that Megan and Lauren, I don't know if it was that morning or that night, heard voices from on the other side of that wall where the white thing would have traveled through. They said the next morning they looked and there was no room next to us. It was like a storage area. And I think this was later at night. So why there would have been like help in that storage area or not, or if it was residual voices and the white thing that passed over my body was on the way to the ghost party in the room next door. I don't know. But yeah, definitely terrifying enough to make me scream bloody murder in the middle of the night at the Stanley Hotel.
Well, not being in the room at the time, I will say what happened after. So Chrissy's story about our cousins Lauren and Megan, their recount of the story, the way they tell it is they were awoken by this blood-curdling scream, and the two of them are so scared that they're actually clinging to each other, and they're like, Chrissy, we would invite you over here into our bed, but we're so scared we can't move. Like, and so the fact that, being in a room with somebody and having them break out in that type of scream, and then having two other people in the same room completely petrified, where they are so scared that they cannot move and literally are just, like Chrissy said, probably not a lot of sleep that happened the rest of the night, but that they couldn't get over it. They said they'll never forget the sound that Chrissy made, that it was just terrifying, and that it's not something that you just do. That, I mean, think about it. Okay, if you're having a dream, most of the time you're trying to scream, but you cannot. That it just doesn't come out. You want to move, you can't move. It's just one of those things. But the fact that she was able to release such a sound to terrify two people in the bed next to her, it's unlikely. And Chrissy's the biggest skeptic, which, oddly enough, folks, Chrissy's the skeptic, but a lot of shit happens to her. So I don't get it. I mean, that go figure. They are picking on her. But
no, but that is true. I think I am very closed off to having any sort of experience. And so again, the veil is thin during sleep or right at the moment of sleep. And so this is where all of these times that these things can come through to me, and all of my experiences that I've ever had have all happened, when I'm about ready to sleep. And I've had dreams of, since they passed on, of our grandparents who come to visit me. And those are all very happy dreams. All four of them will come to me at some points of my life and just, to say hi. And I usually see them at stages of their lives when they're a little bit more vibrant, maybe in their early 60s versus right before they passed. And so I'm thankful for those experiences. And I'm thankful for my vivid dreams. They sometimes can get a little crazy, but I'm thankful for the fact that I could still talk and chat with my departed grandparents that way. Anyway, you got any stories, Sherry?
Kind of told mine.
Well, what about Kane? When Kane was a little boy and what he saw in your house?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked a little bit about this before. So yeah, my son, who's 8 now, when he was little, he would see people. So I guess this starts way back when he was about 2 months old. He was doing tummy time, and I had him in a room. I mean, it was his bedroom. He was born in August, so it was windows closed. He was doing tummy time in his room. There wasn't anything. And I was taking a video of him doing tummy time, and I watched the video after, and there were just obvious orbs just coming at him, very blatant. Like I said, there was no windows open, there were no bugs in the room, there wasn't anything. And I had sent it to my family, and mom even showed it to a paranormal investigator, and he said, "Oh yeah, that's definitely orbs." Like I said, he was 2 months old, and it didn't stop there. When he was a little bit older, he could talk well, but he could definitely articulate, and he would talk to somebody. I would be saying goodnight to him or whatever, and I'd walk into a room and he would look past you and say hi, and I'd kind of turn around, look behind me and like, who are you talking to? And and then he would tell me that he used to see a woman in white with no face. So he was probably 2 at the time, and it's like, oh, the woman in white, and she has no face. And I said, what do you mean she has no face?
Why are kids so creepy? That's so creepy.
So, he would talk, he would talk to people. He would talk about this woman in white with no face. Obviously he had these orbs around him. It's hard to say who they were, what it was. My daughter, who is not quite 2 years younger than him, like, she never did anything like that. So it was just him, and he just had these kind of sensitive moments. He doesn't do it much anymore, but I will say that he does have an eye, for the paranormal, and he's very much into everything that has to do with paranormal and anything scary and all of those types of things. Not sure if they're related, but it's just, he has always kind of been that way. And I don't know who was around him or who this alleged woman in white with no face was. But yeah, definitely creepy things where he would just, talk past you, like talk to somebody who was not you, looking right past your shoulder and having, kind of a conversation with them instead of you. And that's, definitely, not easy on the senses there. But that's kind of what he used to do. Obviously, there's something that goes on in our family where we have these strange occurrences. I don't know. The beacons. Isn't that what JR mom called beacons? Or they were more susceptible?
Oh, yeah. Elva and JR are beacons. Yes. Well, thank you, everybody, for indulging us in this episode. This was kind of fun just to chat. Actually, I don't know if I've heard everybody retell these stories for a long time. They're stories that we've told each other many times, but it's always kind of fun to tell them again and listen to them uninterrupted for the second or third time. So we'll take care, everyone, and we will have a guest next week. We'll be back to our regular formatting. For now, take it away, Mom.
Thank you for listening, and remember to keep that night light on. Good night, sweet dreams.
If you have a story to share, please send it to notyourmothersbedtimestory@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at notyourmothersbedtimestory. And please help us grow by following us on your favorite podcast platform, leaving us a positive review, and telling a friend. Thank you for your support.